the Executive Director of REPOA. Excellencies, a very good morning to you. And it is my humble and singular pleasure to welcome you to this third installment of the Pamoja 6th Conference Series, examining the U.S.-Tanzania partnership through decades. As we have said, this is the third one. We have had two before. As you know, the United States of America was the first country, probably one of the first countries to recognize the new state of Tanganyika on the 9th of December 1961 in a congratulatory note sent by President John F. Kennedy to Prime Minister Julius Nyerere. So this is a very, very fitting occasion
Your Excellency President Kikwete, Ambassador Ali, Ambassador Kaniki, Dr. Imari, members of the Diplomatic Corps, faculty, students, honored guests. Let me begin by saying it's truly an honor and a privilege to be here with you this morning. I'd like to begin by thanking former President Kikwete for participating in today's event and for his steadfast efforts over the course of decades in his public life to strengthen the ties between the United States of America and the United Republic of Tanzania. Mr. President, I say thank you. I want to also extend my deepest thanks to Ambassador Kaniki, Director of the Center for Foreign Relations, for hosting us and giving us this wonderful opportunity. And lastly, let me say I'd be remiss if I did not also thank Dr. Imari and the whole team from Europoa, who have done a great job organizing this event and more broadly for expanding the role of research organizations and think tanks in Tanzania. Finally, let me say thank you to our guests, especially the young diplomats in training. There is no work more important than the world of diplomacy or waging peace, as a former U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower called it. So we thank you all for what you do and wish you the best in your future careers. Ladies and gentlemen, a few days ago, on December 9th, we celebrated a momentous occasion, Independence Day, the 60th anniversary of Tanganyika's independence. On behalf of the United States government and the American people, let me take this opportunity to express our most sincere congratulations on this historic milestone. As a footnote, December 9th, 1961 was also the beginning of official diplomatic relations between the United States of America and newly independent Tanganyika. That was the dawn of a relationship that has grown and deepened over 60 years and produced enormous benefits for both of our people. So it's very fitting that we gather here this morning to look at some of the milestones and the successes of that relationship. As I said, it's an honor to have President Kikwete with us today, and I'm very eager to hear what he has to say. And I also want to hear from you in the audience, and consequently I won't speak very long. But in the few minutes that I have the podium, I'd like to talk in broad strokes about three things. First, how the United States has supported Tanzania's development priorities since independence. Secondly, how the United States and the world benefits from Tanzania's leadership. And lastly, the values that our nations share, which form as the bedrock of this enduring friendship. Let's begin with examining how the United States has supported Tanzania. For 6 decades, the United States has stood side by side with the people of Tanzania in support of achieving the nation's development goals. Our assistance has always been driven by the priorities identified by Tanzanian leaders. A few examples. When newly independent Tanzania needed help expanding its infrastructure, the United States responded, building thousands of kilometers of roads, most notably the Tanzanian-Zambia Highway, which helped connect Tanzania's southern agricultural corridor with international markets. To help President Nyereri's vision of increasing access to education for Tanzania's people, the United States sent Peace Corps volunteers to rural schools and helped build numerous higher learning institutions, including Sokoine University of Agriculture, the College of African Wildlife Management in Wika, the Institute of Public Administration, and teacher training colleges in both Iringa and Dar es Salaam. When President Winnie decided to pursue economic and political reform, the Feed the Future initiative, begun in 2012, has benefited 800,000 Tanzanian farmers by harnessing technology to boost agricultural productivity. These are just a few examples to highlight from our 6 decades of partnership. And of course, our cooperation continues today just as strongly under the administration of President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely proud to talk about the ways that the United States has supported Tanzania. But one thing that I don't think gets mentioned enough is how grateful the United States is for Tanzania's leadership and engagement throughout the decade. A primary example of this is Tanzania's legacy of using diplomacy and mediation to resolve conflicts among neighbors. Perhaps most well-known among these efforts is the role President Nyerere played over a period of decades to secure independence from minority rule for South African states. Our Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, visited Dar es Salaam 3 times to meet with President Nyerere during intense periods of negotiation on this issue. Secretary Kissinger wrote in his memoirs of his admiration for Nyerere's political skill and his passionate commitment to African liberation. There are numerous other examples I could cite, so many that they probably deserve a conference of their own. But among a few of the highlights are the efforts to broker a peace in the conflict in Burundi that culminated in the Arusha Peace Accords, as well as efforts led by President Kikwete in 2008 to end the violence that erupted in Kenya following disputed presidential elections. In all of these efforts, Tanzania has been, to quote former President Bill Clinton, a cause of peace and cooperation across the region. Tanzania also provides vital stability for the region through its troop contributions to peacekeeping missions under the auspices of the United Nations. I understand that currently Tanzania has over 1,400 troops assigned to peacekeeping missions in Central African Republic, DRC, Lebanon, and South Sudan. This work is vitally important, and the world is indebted to these brave troops. And of course, when speaking about the gratitude the United States feels for Tanzania, I would be highly remiss if I did not mention the aid and comfort provided by the Tanzanian people after the bombing of our embassy in 1998. Despite the grief for the lives lost, the tragedy bonded our nations together in solidarity and shared purpose as never before. Ladies and gentlemen, so far I've spoken about how America and Tanzania have supported each other through the years. Before I conclude, I also want to talk about the values we share and which truly form the heart of the unshakable bond between our people. I categorize these values as democracy, equality, and the belief in progress. Let's start with democracy. The United States is well known as the oldest constitutionally enshrined democracy in the world. Our belief in government by the people was first elucidated in the Declaration of Independence, which President Nyerere called one of the greatest documents of all time. Nyerere understood the value of democracy and supported Tanzania's transition to multi-party democracy under the stewardship of President Mwinyi in 1992. Tanzania's multi-party democracy grew and strengthened over time, with opportunities for those with opposing views to air them in the public square, including under the leadership of my friend, President Kikwete. Democracy can be messy. It can sometimes fall short of its ideals, but democracy is resilient, and it can help propel people and nations to new heights. While there is no denying that both our democracies have been tested and challenged, especially in recent years, we will continue to adapt. This is the nature and the strength of than 75% of Tanzanians in a poll taken this year said democracy is preferable to any other form of government. Yet, as President Biden recently remarked, autocrats around the world sitting atop of systems that repress their people suggest they have a better way. They seek to advance their own power, export and expand their influence around the world, and justify their repressive policies and practices as a more efficient way to meet today's challenges. That's not so, but the people of Tanzania and the people of the United States know better. We know that democracy is not a state, it's an act, as the late Congressman and civil rights activist John Lewis once said. It needs to be tended to, nurtured, supported, and strengthened every day. President Rais knew that, President Kikwete knows that. We are all the stewards of our democracy. Yes, political leaders are critical to a healthy democracy, but so is an active and vocal political opposition, a free and independent media, and a civil society empowered to speak their mind. And perhaps most important, each and every citizen whose election day vote helps choose who will lead them and they can use their voice to hold those elected leaders accountable each and every day. President Hassan knows that. And we look forward to working closely with the President and her government to strengthen Tanzania's democratic institutions, promote respect for human rights, and improve the freedom of expression for the benefit of all Tanzanians and the broader democratic world. Now let's turn to equality. The notion that all people are created equal is very famously captured in America's Declaration of Independence. And in many ways, the whole history of our nation has been an effort to live up to that principle. Each day we learn from our past and promise to do better. Yet the fact remains that America is one of the most diverse countries in the world, where people of all ethnic and religious backgrounds comprise this beautiful mosaic of national life. In this, Tanzania is also an example for the world. Few, if any, countries have been able to meld so many ethnic, tribal, and religious communities together in solidarity for national unity. Indeed, at one point in Tanzania's early history, President Rais threatened to resign if Tanzanians from different ethnic backgrounds were not allowed to be a part of the government. This commitment to equality, unity, and respect for diversity remains a pillar of Tanzania's governing philosophy and is a source of great strength and admiration around the world. Finally, I believe we are united in our belief that progress is not just possible, it's inevitable, and that our nations have a unique role in achieving that brighter future. In the United States, the symbol of this belief is the iconic statue of Lady Liberty that stands in New York Harbor. In Tanzania, it is symbolized by the Freedom Torch, first lit on Independence Day 60 years ago on the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro. These have been and will continue to be beacons for freedom, hope, and justice around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that America and Tanzania share a history and a set of values that bond us together. I would argue that today we have an extraordinary opportunity to deepen our relationship and expand our partnership for the greater good of both of our nations and for the rest of the world. Let's not allow this opportunity to go to waste. Let's work together to take our friendship to even greater heights during the next 60 years and beyond those 60 years. Tuli kuwa pamoja, tupa pamoja, na tutakuwa pamoja. Asante sana.
Thank you, Ambassador Rais, for an excellent session. And probably this is the time to introduce myself, a very humble introduction. My name is Salvador Imam. I'm the former Director of Presidential Communications at the State House. Needless to say, my boss there was none other than President Kikwete. And as I said, for the next half an hour, I'll be moderating a conversation with him. It's a very, very humble honor for me to do that. And in the interest of time, obviously, I will not be introducing him. In fact, it would be embarrassing to introduce him. He is known in East Tanzania and beyond the country. Mr. President, it's always a pleasure meeting you. And on this occasion, as I've said, it is a humble privilege and honor to moderate this conversation with you. And we will start with 1998. Ambassador Donald Rais referred to 1998, and that will be our starting point. Mr. President, in 1998, at the end of it, in fact, it was in November 1998, you were appointed Foreign Minister of Tanzania, a young foreign minister, and we would want to know from you what were in fact, before even I asked a question, there were two issues that happened before your appointment. One was that it's 1995, ladies and gentlemen. We had just finished our first multi-party elections following the introduction of multi-party in this country. And also, President Kikwete had finished a very short tenure as Minister of Finance, where he had done a wonderful job under very difficult conditions under President Mwinyi. Now, my first question, Mr. President, is when you were appointed, what was exactly the instruments of your new office? What did President Mkapa want you to do? And what did you want to achieve as a new foreign minister? Welcome, Mr. President.
Yeah, in December 1995, I was appointed Foreign Minister by President Mkapa. Well, you know, as it is, you know, you are appointed. It's a long list. They announce ministers, and then I hear that I've been appointed foreign minister. Because unfortunately, it was the day that my elder sister died. So, in fact, I was busy with the oil, the funeral, then people come and tell me, you know, President Mkapa has announced the cabinet, and you are the foreign minister. So when everybody else was sworn in, I was not there. And I came, I was sworn in alone. Because he told me that it's a busy ministry, you will learn in the job. But one of the priorities, he said, was that we must make sure that the refugees go back home. It's a very tall order. You know, at this time, in 1993, we had a huge influx of refugees from Burundi. After the death of the assassination of President Jakaya, then there was a lot of fighting in the country, a lot of chaos, and in the process, we had many refugees who came from Burundi into Tanzania, into the Ngara area. Then, of course, 1994. In 1993, when this happened, I was Minister for Religious Minerals. 1994, then we had refugees from Rwanda now after the genocide. I was, in 1995, I became Foreign Minister. Then I was was given this assignment. Because we had over 850,000 refugees in Ngara and Karagwe. In Ngara we had a huge camp called Benako. In this camp we had 350,000 refugees. And Ngara is only a district of 150,000 people. So the refugees were 3 times the population. This camp, but at the same time we had another camp where we had the Burundi refugees. We also had another camp where we had refugees mixed marriage. Because of the animosity between the Hutu and the Tutsi, you cannot have Tutsis in the predominantly Hutu camps. But some of them came as couples. Either the husband is Tutsi, the wife is Hutu, or the wife is Tutsi, the husband is Hutu. So then we had to create a separate refugee camp for them. Otherwise, if you leave them alone, they kill them. Especially because they predominantly Hutu. They used to kill the Tutsis. In fact, we lost one of our Tanzanian officials because they suspected him to be a Tutsi. And they killed him. And they buried him in a very shallow grave. You can see the level of animosity these two tribes are. So at least that is, but generally it's a sit down and look at the Tanzanian foreign policy. We have occupied ourselves so much in issues of high moral ground. Now it is time to look at ourselves. Of course, Tanzania's foreign policy at independence. One of the tenets, there are several tenets. I don't think it is the business of today. You have been taught already. There were a number of principles that Tanzania guided Tanzania's foreign policy. And one of these has been to support the independence struggle in Africa. It's clear. And President Nyerere said, as long as there is a country or part of Africa that is not independent, Tanzania is not yet independent. That's the issue principle. So it guided Tanzania's support for the liberation struggle. All the liberation movements, ANC, SWAPO, MPLA, ZANU, ZAPU, FRELIMO. In fact, FRELIMO was formed in Tanzania. Maybe it was a big liberation movement before that. FRELIMO was established in Tanzania. So, then they got the first FRELIMO and the Zimbabweans were in Bagamoyo. Now it's Kaole Secondary School. That's where they used to be. And then, of course, later, all of them moved to Congo, became a military training base. After that, of course, then they were given separate bases. PAC, Pan-Africanist Congress, went to Msata, Congo Msugura. We had ANC at Mkagao, we had FRELIMO and Nachingwea, Farm 17, all these Chunya, all these places where they used as training bases. So we supported the liberation struggle. Fortunately, came 1990, of course then we got independent. 1975, we had Mozambique and Angola. 1980, Zimbabwe. Then 1990, Namibia. And then 1994, we had South Africa, Mandela becoming president. So in a way, our our support to the liberation movement was accomplished. So now I became minister in 1995. We said we had a huge accent of anti-imperialist, anti-colonial struggle. We cannot use the same phrases again. We have to reinvent ourselves. But as you may have been taught, foreign policy is an extension of domestic policy. When the president says, now we have to look, the English or the Americans say, now we have to do me. When the president says now, we have now to do us, what does that mean? Then we sent in the ministry, and that's how we came up with them. We said, what we'll now focus on is economic diplomacy. It's the first time in Tanzania's foreign policy, the word economic diplomacy came into the vocabulary of that ministry. Then we sat down and defined, when we say we are now pursuing economic diplomacy. Because as I said, foreign policy is about projecting national interest in the international arena. That's what foreign policy is all about. You have national interest. You want to project this national interest in the international arena. That is foreign policy and that is diplomacy. And the rest are just the paraphernalias. We're looking at projecting political interest, economic interest, cultural interest, social interest, and security interest. So these are basically, that is what foreign policy is all about. Mnachokisoma pale chote is about kuendeleza maslahi ya Tanzania katika uwanja wa kimataifa. Maslahi ya nchi yako ya kisiasa, yako ya kiuchumi, yako ya kiusalama, hayo ndio ya msingi, lakini yako pia ya kijamii, yako ya kimataifa. I was trying to emphasize it. I'm not pretending to be a teacher with these young students in the classroom. So now we looked at when we time I'll talk about the political interest. But the economic interest, that's what we said we're going to project. But the political interest, we said, what are we going to do? We have to make sure that predominantly we are friends with all countries in the world. Tanzania has to be a friend of every country in the world. Those are the political interests that you are pursuing. So, and when you look at the political interest, or economic interest, or security interest, because when you are friends with every country in the world, then your borders are not threatened. That's how you protect your security interest. Because if you are war in Iran, then your security interest is threatened. If you have an enemy around you, even if it is beyond you, because if you are an enemy of the United States, they are so huge, these guys. Even from America, they can just deal with it. So you have to be friends with everybody. That's the preoccupation of us in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that's where we have preoccupation. Where are we having problems? We have problems with this country, with that country, with that. What do we do to make sure that if we have a problem with this country, how do we solve out that problem so that that country becomes a friend of us? Do we have any security threats with any country in the world? We say, okay, probably because of this and this, that country may be a problem. How do we sort out that problem? Then we need this total stop. And what when you say we're pursuing economic interests, what are those economic interests? What is economic diplomacy? We said our interests are one. We are looking for markets for our goods. Two, we are looking for investments. We are interested in getting technology. So to us, this is what we say, this to us is what constitutes economic diplomacy. So we said we assigned our embassies that we will measure their strength of performance on the basis on how they deliver on these three areas. And of course the fourth point is development assistance, body. If you are an ambassador in Washington, our expectation from you is that you will tell us, I have a market for konyagi in the US. So you tell the Tanzanian distilleries, produce more konyagi, there is a market. Sisi Mungu, ni kweli kabisa, watu wanapenda sana konyagi kule, lakini hatupeleki. There is a market for our vacationers. There is a market for our cotton. No, you can't say to the US, cotton, they're afraid of it. And our biggest problems with the US is they are undercutting prices, so I know the cotton growers in Africa are not making it because of the US. That was subject of discussion here today. So, for our coffee, for our tea, for our diamonds, for our gold, for our coal, for our iron ore, for our minerals. So he said we want him to, when we measure him, how has he created that market? But also for investments. How much has he done to promote investments from his country of representation to Tanzania? We need modern technology. They have to do a lot of market intelligence, search for new technologies. Tell us, now there is this new technology, it can help our farmers. There is this new technology, it can help this and that in the country. How much has he, if there are those in the capitals where we have donors, how much has he been able to talk to that country and get from that country overseas development assistance, which we need to promote growth and development in our country? So, because we are saying, because prior to that, the ambassadors were busy going to parties, to receptions, drink wine, some have a sip of brandy and champagne, and then a report. Today I was invited at the State Department, there was a dinner and so on. We said, that's fine. That invitation for you at the dinner at the State Department, you have been drinking. You did not add anything to Tanzania. So we want you more, when you attend those parties, tell us, at that party, what is it that came out of that is of benefit to Tanzania. So that is how we made these embassies. And you will see from that time on, our ambassadors have been quite busy. Quite busy, looking for markets, looking for tourists, and so on. And we say, this is what we do. In fact, it's economic diplomacy for us as a definition. So that's what. So instead of focusing on issues of high moral ground all the time, talking about anti-apartheid, if you continue to talk about anti-apartheid and Mandela is president, we sure because we used to enjoy this. That every Tanzanian diplomat making a speech condemning imperialism, condemning colonialism, condemning apartheid. Say, no, Mandela is president. Namibia is free, Angola is free, Guinea-Bissau is free, Mozambique is free, Zimbabwe is free. If you continue to talk about colonialism, anti-imperialist stance, say, who is that? That's why we really had to give these our ambassadors to do a new definition of what we really wanted. That is one thing that I can say is the change that we did, and this is the demand that we are making of well, I've talked a lot. I'm not sure if you have an hour.
No, we'll make it, sir. Mr. President, our next question is, we are now in 1998. And you are still foreign minister, and we witnessed the bombing of the US Embassy in Dar es Salaam. In fact, you are the first senior government official to arrive at the scene of the bombing. What was your role in the government response to this cowardly act? What is your historical evaluation of this event in relationship with the USA? Tell us about what President Clinton told you in the conversation you had with him on that day. Mr. President.
This was on the 7th of August. On that day, we were going to travel to Victoria Falls with my president, President Jakaya. There was a meeting Victoria Falls, convened by President Mugabe, and at that meeting we were discussing the first problem between President Kabila, Laura Senior, with his neighbors, Rwanda and Uganda. He was accusing them of aggression. So we were invited. President Mugabe was invited, so as foreign minister to accompany him. I was in the office. We were leaving in the afternoon. I was in the office, and then I went home to prepare myself to go to the airport. Then when I was home, I hear this huge noise. Huge noise, bang. Even the doors in my place, in my chair, were shaking. So I said, what is it? And then someone from the office called me that there's been a bomb explosion in the US Embassy. So because I was leaving, and I'm sure that as foreign minister, the embassy has been bombed. We have to talk about it with my president on the plane. So I rushed, went to the place. There was the Shaggy, Lam. I met him there. He was telling me that there's been this unfortunate, heinous incident that has happened. So then I consoled them. Said, fine, talk to other people in the embassy. Of course, we already had our police and the military in the place already. So we left with the president. We go to Victoria Falls. We arrived at Victoria Falls. And then at night, night I get a call. Said, received a call in my room. Said, this is the White House. President Clinton wants to talk to you. Take the people to the phone. He says, we've been trying to talk to your president, but it appears it's already late at night, but we can't wait until the morning. The bombing has taken place, and we are sending in our intelligence team. They are already airborne. They are coming to Dar es Salaam to work with the intelligence community in Tanzania on the matter. He says, I have only one request from our team, that let people, let nobody pick any metal at the scene, or even anything that is nearby. Let's leave that to our team. When they come out, they will pick up others, and then somehow they need that for their hand. I couldn't go to knock at the president's door. There's a cousin. So what I did, I can't wait until the morning. Then I called the Inspector General of Police. That time I said, IGP, there is this message from the US. Your counterparts from the US are already airborne. They will arrive there anytime tonight. But this is the message. Nobody should pick any metal left at the side. And it happened, this is what really happened. I helped someone. So the subject of discussion today. So that's it. But the aftermath of that is it brought closer cooperation within the US Defense and Intelligence Community, with the Tanzanian Defense and Security and Intelligence Community. Direct cooperation between FBI and our police, the CIA and Tanzanian Intelligence Services, and our military on counter-terrorism issues. That's where we build that. That's what I can say is the aftermath of that. And well, the rest is history. We have strong cooperation in all those areas. Because of this, I cannot use the word thanks to this, no. Because of this, because of what has happened, then it led to stronger cooperation. How we strengthen our borders, and because the guy who, because there was a ban, there was a ban, and the guy who, the ban had explosives that kept the explosives with the embassy. But this is a truck that was the guy who bought the truck in Mombasa. He crossed with the truck here, and then he used it. So then there was the whole issue of how the immigration services, our border security people, were working with the intelligence communities. After that, there was a lot of support from the US to strengthen our defense and security establishment. That is what I can say as what happened.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. You have just made a reference to Burundi, and now we are going to talk a little bit about Burundi. Because as foreign minister, your diplomatic time was consumed by efforts to end the Burundi conflict. Now, what were some of the milestones of these negotiations, peace negotiations for Burundi? Any reflections on the visit by US President Bill Clinton to Tanzania to support the process which was under President Mandela and Nyerere Foundation? Did this process, Mr. President, offer useful insights into how you came to deal successfully with conflicts in Madagascar, in Kenya, in Comoro, in South Sudan, in Zimbabwe, and the Niagara Coast as president.
It's a lot to say, but let me say the conflict in Burundi, when I became foreign minister, there was a meeting in Tunis. President Kapa was there, President Mobutu was there, and Museveni discussed the problem in Burundi. This meeting was convened by President Carter, Jimmy Carter. So there was a lot of discussions on how President Carter's view was that maybe President Nyerere takes care of Burundi. And at that time, former President Atete Tumani-Ture of Mali should look at, take a look at the Rwandese problem. Because Rwanda had just come out of the genocide, and there was new government of President Kagame and President Bizimungu. So then we came back. When we came back, President Nyerere said, I'm ready to do something. But I want to work in an environment that is African-led, an African initiative. The ideas of President Carter is fine. But I think we need to have an African. So as the leaders were contemplating on what to do in Burundi, he decided to undertake a visit to Burundi. And my president, then President Kapa said, Jakaya, go with Marim to Burundi. Because this Burundi thing is going to occupy us for many years. So we traveled. It was immediately after Christmas. I think it was the 26th, the 27th of December. So we went to Burundi. We met all the players, all the major players. Because at that time, Frodemu had the President Timatunga. Uprona had the Prime Minister. Because there was an election, they won 65 seats. And Uprona shared the rest, the remaining. But for them, Bagnan Masenaj, they said, we are going to bring in the Uprona to work with us. They gave them the premiership, they gave them as the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Interior, the Ministry of Finance, something. Then from them took the many ministries. So there was this coalition government. So we had meetings with the President Tibantunganya, we had meetings with the leadership of Frodemu, the party, we had meetings with the leadership of Uprona, we also had meetings with the Prime Minister. I remember that time it's Twine. And then we also had meetings with the Minister of Defense, that Femin, and then we had the defense establishment. There was Bikomagu, I think Chief of Defense Forces, and then Sibaku, who was head of the Gendarmerie. The kind of paramilitary, but very strong. He's much stronger than our FFU. But the Gendarmerie. So we had meetings for all these major players. The important thing President Nyerere wanted to know is just to get the feel. Friend was I said, I want to know what to facilitate. And also to hear get the impression if these guys really are comfortable with me, facilitate. So these were the two purposes of this mission. So we had wonderful meetings, and one interesting thing was that when President Nyerere was meeting the Prime Minister and Prime Minister, it was saying, we the opposition. And President Nyerere said, wait a minute, Prime Minister, how do you become opposition in a government that you are Prime Minister? He says, no, sorry, terminology. So, but then we have to left, he said, President Nyerere said, you see, this is the problem in this government. That you have a government, the people in government, at the level of a Prime Minister, they consider themselves to be the opposition in their government. So he said, this is the work that we have to do. So of course, then we had dinner with all of them. We had a general meeting to summarize, and then we had dinner at the President's Palace, and President Nyerere was joking that if the people of Burundi saw you here at the dinner, eating, laughing, talking in a friendly manner, yet after you come out of here, you masquerade as enemies out in the streets, they will be surprised. If you can carry this spirit from here to the streets, that will be lovely. So that is how. Then after that, then Mwalimu started the Burundi talks in Mwanza. But at that time it was an initiative of Rwanda, of Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Uganda was the leader of that process, and Tanzania was vice chair. Then Mwalimu one day called the three heads of state to Mwanza to brief them on where he was. He was expressing the difficulties he was going through. Mainly the attitude of those who are in power. Because the real power was in the hands of the military and the people in the ground. That's when he came up with the idea that now let's start a bigger initiative that is going to bring more leaders and more countries involved. That's how the Arusha process started. Now it brought in the countries of the Great Lakes: Tanzania, Rwanda, Congo, Zambia, and it brought in at that time it was still the OAU chair, members of Ethiopia, and Kenya was brought in. So that's how we started the Arusha process. The process continued. It had its own problems here and there. In 2000, we were able to get the agreement signed. But before that, in 1990, President Nyerere died. President Mandela took over to finish the work. In 2000, the agreement was signed. But after the signing of the agreement, at the signing of the agreement, two groups that were quite significant did not participate. The CFDA, FDA of Pierre Nkurunziza. When the process started, CFDA was under the leadership of Leonard Nyangoma. And then midway, they overthrew Nyangoma from leadership. And Pierre Nkurunziza took over leadership. And President Nyerere said, I'm not ready to talk to mutineers. So the process in Burundi continued with Leonard Nyangoma without Nkurunziza. At which time Nyangoma had actually lost leadership of the organization. That was the main movement that was fighting the government in Burundi. So because President Nyerere had refused to talk, then at the signing of that agreement, CNDD was not in the picture. There was also another big movement, the Hutu FNL. They also fighted because they all started as Hutu FNL, and then they created the CNDD. For them, created the CNDD. Agathon Rwasa was leading the Hutu FNL. So after that, the peace was signed, but the fighting was going on. Then we had to start another track of involving the two factions now that were actually fighting. At which time President Mandela had said, I'm too old now. He handed over the process to Jacob Zuma, who was deputy president of South Africa at that time. Mbeki was president, then Jacob Zuma was deputy president. So we continued with the CNDD until we came up also we brought them on board. That's how we started. We started with the Buyoya as the leader, and then Rais came in, then Nkurunziza after that. So that's the process in Burundi. There is so much in it. I think I just give you the skeleton. But what are the issues that transpired and how difficult it has been? Because there was a time when the CNDD almost had encircled Bujumbura. And the fear then was, if we leave them to go into Bujumbura by force, we may end up with a killing like the genocide in Rwanda. So efforts had to be made to make sure that they come to the negotiating table. So that's it. It's not bad. There's so much to take. But the other thing that we worked, which even Salva has skipped, is the Congo. As I was saying, we had a meeting in Victoria Post 1998, where Kabila Lawrence was accusing Rwanda and Uganda as aggressors. Then in Burundi. At that meeting, it was decided foreign ministers, representatives of the intelligence communities, and the representatives of the military of the countries that were there should undertake a mission to the DRC, to Rwanda, to Uganda, to ascertain whether the allegations by President Kabila was true. So that is how I was part of that mission. We went to Kinshasa, we saw what we saw. And then I had to come back because at that time the Secretary of State, Modern Albright, was coming to Dar es Salaam. I had to come back, flew from Kinshasa, Nairobi, drove all night to Dar es Salaam. So that's how we started. And then it continued. The thing continued until it came to a point where us in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the consultation of the President, we said, if we don't take the initiative as Tanzania to talk to our friends of Uganda and Rwanda, this war will continue endlessly. That's how we started. We developed a non-paper. We held discussions with the minister, with Uganda and Rwanda in Kampala. That's where we agreed. Now the movement has to go to, we started peace process in Lusaka. Then we asked President Mugabe to talk to President Chiluba, ask if Rwanda is, somebody is ready to host the talks. They said that's fine. Then we brought the Minister of Security from Zambia to join us in Kampala for the talks with the the minister from Uganda. And then we have the issue of the rebels. How do we reach out to the rebels? We said, okay, fine. Uganda and Rwanda, who are friends with the rebels, help them, bring them to Dar es Salaam. I had a meeting with them at White Sands Hotel to negotiate with the rebels of the Congo, to convince them to go to Lusaka for the talks. After we agreed, then we all convened in Lusaka. And then from there, I had to go to President Kabila to agree to send his foreign minister to join the talks, the government of the Congo, to join the talks in Lusaka. We had a very difficult meeting with him, but at the end of the day, we agreed. That's how we had the talks in Lusaka. The talks which ended up with the agreement in the Congo, which brought peace in the Congo. So that's one of the things. Of course, the Zimbabwe thing I did when I was president. I had discussions with President Mugabe before, and then there was an incident where they hit Morgan Chapter was beaten. I was on tour of Arusha again. I flew to Harare, spoke to President Mugabe. That is when he said, okay, fine, now we have to talk. Can you help us? He said, I don't know, I know some of them, but I don't know the MDC guys. And we agreed that President Mbeki could help. Then I said, okay, fine. I told President Mugabe, can you allow me now to talk to President Mugabe, President Mbeki? He said, that's fine. I spoke to President Mbeki. That is how we started the process. And then I was chairman of the organ. I convened a meeting in Dar es Salaam, where President Mugabe then reaffirmed what he told me, that they are ready now to talk to the MDC. So then that's where we installed President Mbeki formally to lead the Zimbabwe talks. Which ended up with the Global Partnership Agreement, I think what they called it, where Mugabe became president and Morgan Tsvangirai became prime minister. Kenya, I was chairman of the AU. There was Kofi Annan, President Mkapa, and the Grasa Machel helping the parties in Kenya after the problems. Then they ran into difficulties. President Mkapa called me. He says, I think you may be useful if you come. I said, but how do I come? He said, find your way, he's your president. So I spoke to a friend who was a minister close to President Kibaki. I asked him, can you please tell the president I want to come? And then I went to Kenya. I arrived at the airport. President Kibaki was there to receive me and the whole cabinet. But I found the mood was a bit subdued. You know, when a friend comes, you will feel there's going to be a lot of happy faces. Not the happy faces, one of the that. So as I was driving into town with the foreign minister, Moses Wetangula, at that time, was telling me, as we were sitting there waiting for you, Kofi Annan had announced to suspend the talks. So President Kibaki said two things. One, tell Kofi Annan not to board the plane, because if he boards the plane, and things will be worse. In Kenya, everybody will think that everything is hopeless. At least the talks are what holding, giving some hope to at least there's going to be a way out of the crisis. And there's the second thing, you should not leave until we agree. But I have a country to govern. I cannot promise that I will stay in Kenya until you agree. So I thought, town. I met Kofi Annan, President Kappa. Then I came to understand the issues of difficulties. I met Raila Odinga and his team. It was already late. I met the president in the morning. We had talks with the president. And then we were able to identify areas of convergence and areas of divergence. That is what you do when you're brokering peace. You identify areas of convergence and areas of divergence so that you work on the areas of divergence until you also get convergence. So that's what we did. And after that, we had another meeting in the morning now with President Kibaki, President Kofi Annan, until we agreed. Until the agreement was signed. That's how Kenya got the peace. There's much more. I think I'm going to also go all the time, you guys. You ask so many questions. You want to know about human issues. You know these young people to know how much we labor for the country and for the region. Any more questions?
Yes, sir.
No, I got the time for you guys.
Mr. President, we have a couple of questions to finish this session.
Maybe in the center of the Burundi agreement, my president spoke to President. He asked him, please, if you have time this time, because if we have guarantors, if US is going to be one of the guarantors of the peace in Burundi, that would add a lot of fun. Unfortunately, President accepted, and he came. He came and it meant so much. It meant so much, you know, when a sitting US president come. It gave us a lot of homework, a lot of work to do. It was the first time we are receiving a US president. And you know, they're not easy. When a president comes, US president comes, it's hell of a job. But President Clinton came, you know, you used to have these speed bumps from Arusha, from airport to Arusha. And these guys, he raised all of them. Well, of course, first they told them they were still the option of helicopter. Lift him from the airport to Arusha. And Marine One. Marine One was on the ground, but then they opted for a road. So they had to erase They had to just erase all of them. And because they did not want the president's motorcade to slow down at any point. But they are so generous. They erased them. After the president left, they gave us the money to erase our speed bumps. So that's how President Clinton came, and we very appreciative, and gave us a lot of strength, a lot of value to the work that we've been doing on brokering peace in Burundi.
Mr. President, thank you. 2005, you become the fourth president of our nation, following a massive electoral landslide in the general elections. What were your foreign policy goals? And what did you hope the country to achieve through international diplomacy, including relations with the United States of America?
Well, as I was saying at the beginning, foreign policy is about advancing national interest in the international stage. That's all. Looking at the political, economic interest, security interest, cultural, social interest. That's all that we're looking at. And so, because I've been foreign minister, for 10 years, I've done the job. For me, really, it is just continuing the work that I've been doing. Of course, I was doing it under President Mugabe. Now I was going to do it under me. So I was just continuing the work that we've been doing, pursuing the same goals. making sure that we have friends all over the world. Of course, making sure that we're friends around the country. And as you're saying, when you look at friends around the world, we were doing it in concentric circles. These are the concentric circles in diplomacy. The first concentric circle is your neighboring countries. That's the first concentric circle. That you have to make sure that you are friends with all the countries around you. The next one is the region, the outer region, the outer ring. So for us, it is the neighbors, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique. That's our first concentric circle. Because if you are not friendly with these ones, and there is a problem of insecurity, then you will not be able to advance your security interest. Then it is easy for you to be at war with any of this. Because we have had that experience. We went to war with Uganda. So that's why, the first is your first concentric circle is your neighbors. So we have to make sure that we continue. We did that when I was foreign minister. We became friendly with everybody, and then we continue that. Even when we had difficulties with relations with some of our neighbors, but we made sure that we talked through those issues. We had frank discussions. What are the issues? What are the areas of differences? We sorted out our differences. So that is our first concentric circle. And for us, and then the second concentric circle is the region. And for us, the outer region here is the SADC region. Okay. And then, of course, our third concentric circle now is the African continent. And the things we've been doing through the African Union. Then, of course, we look at the international, global, and of course, the various now regions, Europe, Americas, Asia, and of course, globally, then the United Nations. And make sure that we are faithful and proactive members of the United Nations organization, implementing the principles and the ideas of the United Nations, doing what is required of us by the United Nations. So that is essentially what we need. So as I was saying, we are pursuing the same economic diplomacy, issues of interest. When I was undertaking visits, I had with me delegations of business people. I remember when President Kagame organized as foreign minister, we took a delegation of business people. The person we thought was so big here and a big project, then we went to Boston. Boston is a huge financial market. Because after New York, the next financial market in the US is Boston. So we go there. Then Ambassador Steve was the ambassador. So he was a Bostonian at that time. So he brings in businessmen. And the one who had a big project was, I think, a dairy processing plant, was $120,000. And we talked to this big businessman. The other side, 20,000, 50,000. And then Ambassador Steve comes to me, we know minister, these folks are not serious. Because when those countries of industry in the US were speaking to our people, they realized this, because they say, if I go to the board and tell them we have a business of $120,000, they will tell me pay it from your pocket. It's not good. Sikwete nikikubwa kweli. Mradi wa dola 120,000. Unazungumza na watu ambao yeye kwa mwezi analipa dola milioni 1. Akienda kuambia bodi yake kwa kupata sisi mradi wa kushirikiana na Tanzania wa dola 120,000. Na vipi kwenye mshahara wako lipe? Wanaona kama vile hakufanya kazi. So that's the reality, of course. To us, so big, but to them it was very hard. So that's what we started. So we always used to take them with us. In the process that they will learn, they come up with some serious projects. Okay, so that's what we did. We look for markets, promote things, and so on. I spoke about investment promotion in all these meetings we organized. So these are the things that, as I was saying when I was doing this foreign minister, there are things that we continue. Of course, the new thing which we did as president now is our responsibility to the United Nations was to commit Tanzanian peacekeepers. You know, during President Mwinyi's term, we sent peacekeepers to Liberia. Friends from the US came and convinced us, and then we said the promise the US said was, okay, we'll do all the logistical support. They facilitated the movement of our troops to Liberia. They promised us to give us trucks, equipment, which the US kept his promise. But then there was no money to pay our soldiers. So when they finished their mission, I was Minister of Finance then. So my friend Abraham Kinana came to me. He says, look, our young men are coming back. And nobody has paid them. Because we went there with the understanding of the US, and there was ECOMOG. This was a UN ECOMOG, it's a West African ECOWAS initiative, and they don't recognize our people, so there was nobody to pay. But the ECOMOG. So we said, okay, fine. He says, we don't want the problems that happened to one of the countries. Because when the soldiers were not paying, when they went back home, they said they're demonstrating, go to the State House to ask for their money. So when the president was told, the president ran away from the State House. They said for him, they said he's not there. So they took over and declared one of them president. I don't want to mention the country. So we were discussing this, we said, we don't want that crisis. So I said, okay, fine. Then of course we the Ministry of Foreign Finance, we pay for the 5 years and all the money that our soldiers would. So with that experience, then I think there was a decision. We are not going to participate in peacekeeping operations. So this change I made as president was now to make sure that we are going to participate in peacekeeping operations, but we have to know who is going to be asking for our troops to participate. We said UN, fine. African Union, fine. But these ad hoc kind of initiatives, no way. So that's how we participate. We sent, I think, police to Lebanon, and they're still there. We sent soldiers to Darfur, still operations in Darfur. Then we sent peacekeepers to DRC in the fight against M23. Of course, later my successor sent them in troops to Central African Republic. So that's a major development that we did. Of course, there was a time we were asked to send troops to Somalia. But we said, okay, Uganda is already there, Burundi is already there, Ethiopia is already there. We said, our contribution should be to train the Burundi army and the Somali army. Train the Somali army so that as these peacekeepers leave, there will be a credible force to take care of the security of their country. We set aside Makweyoni JKT for that purpose. We waited for the trainees, they never came. is the part of course, then where is, I think we sent troops to Darfur. Yeah. So those are the things that we did when I was president. Of course, with development, of course, we are quite keen on dealing with countries. And one of the countries I had made a priority was the United States of America. Again, it's the first country I visited after becoming president. We went to the US. We were having difficulties getting an appointment with President Bush. Because I think there are a lot of internal problems, internal issues that they were saying. The chief of staff was saying, the president needs to get somebody who is going to give some high profile. Not this one. This one is coming here for. But then I was friends with Condoleezza. We had known each other when I was foreign minister. I was friends with Jakaya first. She was Assistant Secretary of State. Then they said, don't worry. What we'll do is seek an appointment with the Vice President. What we will do when you are there with Dick Cheney, President Bush will come to the office. Precisely that is what happened. I think the chief of staff didn't know this state plan that was and they were saying it was going to be the second time it is being done. The first time it was done when Lyndon Johnson was president. This won't be the second time. So indeed, when we were there talking to Vice President Cheney, Bush comes in. He said, oh, fine, you're a good friend. Every people say you're a good man. The United States promised we are going to work with you. Let's take a photo. So took a photo and then he goes. So that's, but I did that deliberately because I knew the voice of the United States. You know, you are doing it, that's why you buy it to the reality. The US may not give you a lot of money. But if they say yes, many will work with you. If they say we don't like you, many will. So you have to, that is the real politics. You have to know the real how the world operates. Hawa jamani kumkataa Mugabe, uchumi wote ukaanguka. Ndio kusema tutakula mihogo yetu, kuleni mihogo yetu. Maskini hiyo inapendeza. Ni lazima utambue hiyo. How clever you work on this reality. So that's how you develop the friendship with the US. We are good friends. The White House, we develop good friends. The State Department. That's it. We had excellent relations. And President Bush took a visit in 2008 to visit Africa for 6 days. Of those 6 days, he spent 3 days in Tanzania. And another interesting thing, usually the US president, when they visit other countries, they do only one stop. In Tanzania, they did 2 stops. That is in Arusha. So again, unique, because they were saying, you know, when you have the president in Dar es Salaam, you take him to Arusha. The very system they established in Dar es Salaam has to be established in Arusha. Everything, the security, everything else. So it is quite a hassle. But they decided to do that. It's a measure of the friendship that we were able to develop between us. So we had a visit to President Bush President Bush. The issues that we discussed with President Bush, of course, before, when I was campaigning, before the campaign, I took a break. And then I went to US. I met a colleague. We had a meeting with Connie. And one of the things that the request I made to her was that, please, we've been talking about the MCC support. It's not coming along. And only the Secretary of State is the chair of this committee. So he said, they promised that we will do it. So I got the information that they are going to do it. So when I visited the US, and we had discussions with President Bush, I talked about the issue of MCC. He said we'll do it. And I told him that I think it would be so nice if we sign this agreement in Dar es Salaam when you visit us. So he said, that's a good idea. And we did sign it in front of the state house, the MCC, the largest MCC company. In no other country, has received so much money. We did our roads. We did electricity, raw electricity. We did the water supply for Dar es Salaam, for Morogoro, and several other places. We had another submarine cable across the channel to Zanzibar. Yes, so we did so much. In fact, at that time when we were discussing MCC, I was saying, because they asked us, what is it that you want us to do? Because we were the ones who were saying, they're not dictating. I wanted education, I wanted issues of roads and so on, and then they said, no, then what we are going to do, let's rule the other state. Because already health was already there with PEPFAR, PMI. They said education we'll do later, but let's do other things. So then because of that, I asked for the roads, which nobody was supporting us. I remember to have gone to one country and asked for a road from Tunduru to Songea. I was told it's a road from nowhere to nowhere. Then I tried with the US. We talked from Tunduru to Songea. And then at times we were so crazy. Kuna watu wa Tanzania wakienda kuambia kwamba wanajua kutoka Tunduru kuja huko inapita Seru, kuja barabara lami watakanyaga tembo. And then so the US deducted the portion from Tunduru to Namtumbo. They started from Namtumbo. Then they said that's fine. The other road which we're getting, nobody is supporting us, Tunduma, Sumbawanga. We said that's fine. We are so keen on the road from Tanga to Horogoro. They said that's fine. So we got some of these projects, and some of them areas for the things which were rural electrification. We started the big programs on that. So we signed that compact. But before signing, of course, we had talks. During the talks, he said, okay, fine, what else do you want us to do? I said, help us with two things. One, science teachers. We have a huge shortage of science teachers. Can we get teachers from the US for science and mathematics? And a huge shortage in secondary schools. President Bush was always says, we in the US don't have enough teachers as well. So that's an area where we can't help you much, but we can help you with teacher education. Then we said, okay, fine, now how about using the Peace Corps program to bring in science teachers? He said, that's a good idea. So I think that's why you find, after that, the Peace Corps programs throughout the continent, there's a huge accent of science teachers. That it was at our university. The other thing we said, okay, fine, we support for for science textbooks and mathematics textbooks. We said we are going to write the manuscript. We want you to help us in printing. I think we got 3 million books, about 3 million books, that program. But I hope the program is continuing because there's still a need for science textbooks. We wrote the manuscript. It's not books or physics or chemistry books from out of Minnesota, no. It was our own people wrote the manuscript. They only helped us with the printing. They printed the printing for us, and that's the president to have a meeting with President Obama. To me, my main issues here was, of course, continued cooperation, because we had wonderful cooperation with the Bush administration. I wanted that, and all the other programs under USAID, Obama, that we had this agreement on Peace Corps, science teachers. We had this program on textbooks. He said, no, that's fine. He said, it's guaranteed. So that's why, in fact, the implementation of the science textbooks and math textbooks was actually undertaken by the Obama administration now, and it is continuing to this day. So, we had a program where I was direct support to smallholder farmers. I remember I visited one of the sites in Kilombero. There was a big company there, I think a consortium of US, European companies growing rice. And there were small outgrowers, and I think they were getting support from the USAID to train these outgrowers. As this large company was getting 4 to 5 tons per hectare. So this is the kind of support and cooperation that we've been having. But
Mr. President, wonderful, wonderful, because you have answered some of about 4 questions in one. So we can go to our last 2 questions. One is, Mr. President, kindly summarize a few leadership lessons that will benefit the young diplomats in training. They are sitting before and they will want to know a few leadership lessons that they can take from you. And then the final question is, in hindsight, Mr. President, how do you characterize the evolution of the U.S. partnership during your years in public service? I know you already have answered this, but this is an occasion to add a few points that...
Do you have ambition to become president? How many of you? None. So then I don't have to talk about experiences of being president. Yeah, I've seen it, but to put you, we have serious discussions on how we do that we facilitate the return of the refugees. The Prime Minister from Rwanda came. I was with him in the camps, Benako. Then we flew with him to the camps in Karagwe, had discussions with the refugees. So we had a good response. And then of course we had some problems with some people those who were looked after the refugees, some from UNHCR and the others. Because as we had already made a good plan of movement of the refugees on a voluntary basis, and we sent our people now to assist. Some crazy guy told them to walk out of the camps, but not going towards Rusumo, but coming inwards into the country. Then when our people caught up with them, said, since we've gone out of the camps, fine. Then we just walked them across the border, across the bridge to Rwanda. Then of course we organized the others in a more orderly manner. So that's where we had the orderly repatriation of the Rwandese refugees. Of course we had in the camps what we call intimidators. We identified them. We had made special arrangements so that those who were intimidating people not to go back because they were fearing their own problems, their own crimes that they had committed, we took care of them in order to allow the others to leave. Well, of course, we did not have a similar response from the Burundi administration. The Burundi administration was actually encouraging people to migrate to Tanzania. Then we had, so these are some of the things. As I'm saying, there is no 1 + 1 = 2. So every time there will be issues, depending on what the current issues. There are times we run into difficulties with countries. There was a time when I was president, we had difficulties with our neighbors in the Southern community. Yes. When they established the coalition of the willing, then I had to talk to Parliament, ask them who is not willing. Because you guys are meeting on your own. And call us not willing. You decided not to invite us. So as I'm saying, there is nothing I can say it's 1 + 1. The important thing is have national interest in focus and advance the political interest, economic interest, security interest, social cultural interest. So as issues arise, you handle them as they come on the basis of their merit. That's what I can do. The same as being president. As president, there are issues. Sometimes you have issues. You tell Machina to stay. Sometimes you think nowadays there's too much. You tell them to forget. The basic. So it all depends upon at what point in time, what are the issues, what are the circumstances which guide you into doing what you're supposed to do. There's only 1 + 1 = 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for that excellent conversation, as always. We have now come to the end of the second session of Pamonya's 6th conference series. We'll now go into the third part. If there are any questions to the President, I ask you to direct them to the President during the next session. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be reflections on diplomacy. This is a straightforward question and answer session. So the floor is open to anybody to stand up and ask a question or make a comment or express a concern. The ground rules are very simple. Get a microphone, introduce yourself, introduce your association, and then ask a question. We'll have another high-level panel, as I said at the start. The President will remain where he is and will be accompanied by Ambassador Donald Wright and our distinguished Ambassador Amina Salom Ali. They will be taking questions from you, and that's it. Now, to open the floor, I know sometimes it's very difficult for someone to pick up a microphone and start talking. I'll ask 2 questions. The first one, Madam Ambassador, is to you. You are a hugely experienced diplomat. You have achieved many accolades in that area. For a long time, you represented the African continent through the African Union to the United States of America in Washington. This was a massive responsibility, to say the least. And I'll kindly share with us the experience of representing a continent, not a country, a continent, at such a high level, in such a high-profile country. And how did you manage, and of those of individual countries, because the continent has its own interests, and the individual countries sometimes have their own interests. How did you manage to align those interests for so long, for 10 years you are there? Madam Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you very much, Brother Salman. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the host of this event today, the Minister of Minister of Foreign Affairs and State Cooperation, as well as the Board and Center for foreign relations. But I would like to give my special thanks and gratitude to my mentor and my leader, His Excellency Dr. Kikwete, who was instrumental for me to be working with the African Union. At the same time, I would like to thank Rais for giving us to facilitate this event today. Now, I was minister in the Zanzibar government, so when there was a need for representative to represent Africa, especially in the US, there were some names, and I came to realize His Excellency was instrumental for me to leave the government and work to represent African Union. I really wanted, I didn't have an opportunity, but to thank him today for his support. So, in the 90s, in the early 80s, our leaders decided to open the bureau in the US. And for obvious reason, because at that time we didn't have an office in the US. And if you remember in the 80s, there are many countries were still not liberated. And there are some issues, both economically, politically, and socially, that we wanted to express and to sit down with the US government so that they will have a positive decision-making process and they will support Africa. So the decision was taken in the early 80s, but the office opened in 2006. So the challenge that we face at that time, you find, if you are in the African Union meeting, you find one of the issues that we are discussing is for Africa to have one voice. Because if you don't have one voice, that means you go to the meeting when you express different interests. And that was the challenge that we were facing at that time. So for the US, we were mandates, I got many different mandates. And one of the mandates was to promote one voice. That means to express an interest at level, at the African level. So we tried. I was the chair of the Ambassadors Committee, and at the time we had our own office, so all the meetings were taking place in my office. But we all agreed to talk about African interest rather than individual countries' interest. But that didn't stop any individual country to express maybe disagreement or maybe disappointment on those issues. But at the end of the day, we all look into how that decision will empower Africa, how that decision will enable Africa to realize their interest, the African interest, but at the same time to push for our African agenda, and that means also for our countries to develop at a faster growth or whatever we wanted to discuss. So we achieved a lot, and as His Excellency President Kikwete was talking about, I was actively engaged with him in most of the discussion from 2006 until I come back in 2015. I worked closely with him, and we pushed a lot of things during that time. And I remember His Excellency was the chair in many discussions. Why? Because he put interest of Africa in front. You know, because when we talk about Africa, we believe Africa should be united and we should have that voice, that push, that strength that will realize the Africa, a different Africa according to our African agenda. So you name it, when we had Agenda 2063, His Excellency was one of the pioneers, supported it. When we had the Agenda in the United Nations, we talk about what Africa wants, His Excellency also was there to support Africa. And also, within our group, most of the time, when we talk about issues that need decisions that are needed, they will definitely point to Tanzania to be the leader, you know, that to be able to bring in that voices together. So it was not as challenging, but I think we have managed to really reach some level that we wanted to. And I think because of that, of his presence and his commitment, and he was very liked by the leaders of US leaders. And he said himself, he said what had happened. Even during President Obama, he was a very close friend with President Obama, with President W. Bush. When we came back from the visit of President Bush, I remember I was told by my colleague, saying they have never seen the aftermath of the visit. We had a special meeting. There was dialogue, there was a discussion about the visit, the way he was treated, he was welcome in Tanzania, and it was something that really made us proud. So our office had a lot of work. We had all those programs, including the Power Africa. We also had Grow Africa program. We had a special meeting, I remember. We discussed issues on how to improve our agriculture, how to analyze issues, how we can find a solution. And this is where we had the Fit for Future program, the Rais at that time. So the office was meaningful, and I think it really did what it was supposed to do, to be able to promote African agenda with the US. And also at the same time, our US government, we are the only institution that were given a congressional sort of permission to have a diplomatic mission. Because other institutions wanted also to have a diplomatic mission, but because the US administration realized the importance of that mission, we were given diplomatic mission status. But at the same time, in the same period, the US administration decided to open a twin office in Addis Ababa, and that office was all led by the ambassador or representative. And that was something that really pushed more both of our agenda. And now we're talking about our relationship between US and African Union. It's very warm, it's at high level because of the decision that were taken by the President W. Bush and our own chairperson of the Union. And of course, the critical role they played, our leaders, including His Excellency Dr. Jakaya, our retired president. And we are all thankful, sir, for your contribution to really keep the African agenda at that level. And now everybody knows. But we still have challenges. But sometimes we at least reach an understanding and realize what our fear for, because our forefathers, the father of the nation, wanted one Africa, although we have not realized, but at least in terms of integration, we have really taken we've taken a number of steps, including the recent created Africa Free Trade areas. One of the ways to be able to reach an economic cooperation within Africa. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Amina, for that wonderful response. But also we need to thank you for the wonderful job you did for Africa in Washington. Thank you very much. Now my next question will go to Ambassador Donald. Ambassador, you know this country from many days as a Peace Corps. You also have been a wonderful ambassador of your country in Tanzania in advancing the partnership between our two states. You have listened to President Kikwete and you have just listened to Ambassador Amina describe the 6 decades of the partnership. I would want to request you to talk about the future. How do you see the partnerships in another 6 decades, let's say? Welcome, Ambassador.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And again, so enjoyed having President Kikwete and Ambassador Ali on the stage with me to discuss and to reflect on our 60-year partnership. You know, if I look back over the last 60 years of our relationship, I think it has been very fruitful in all of the areas that you talk about. I know when I came here as ambassador, focus on. I don't know if any of you know my background. I'm actually a medical doctor by training. My introduction to Tanzania goes back 33 years, very early in my medical career, when I flew across the ocean to do some volunteer work in the Mnazi Moja Hospital in Zanzibar, working with children. Little did I know, and it's something you need to think about your future, that the next time I landed in the Julius Nyerere Airport, 3 decades later, I would be the U.S. ambassador, and it is truly an honor and a privilege to be here. I have to say that what I learned about Tanzania and the Tanzanian people 30 years ago, I found them to be so warm, so friendly, so optimistic. They seem to treat everybody as a member of their family. And I was also introduced not only to the beauty of the people, but the beauty of your country and the park systems that you have here, and the fact that conservation is so important. And I was really pleased to return 3 decades later and realize that the people and the country in those areas have not changed. As far as areas that are priorities and that are very important to the U.S., naturally because of my background in health, I was very interested in health outcomes. I'm the 19th U.S. ambassador to Tanzania. Unfortunately, there's been a great deal of good work that has occurred prior to my arrival in the area of health. I think PEPFAR is our biggest contribution. We now have about 1.5 million Tanzanians on antiretroviral treatment, and the death rate from HIV/AIDS has dropped by 3/4, by 75%. We're determined to continue to work hand in hand with the Ministry of Health to bring this epidemic under control. But our areas of interest do not stop at HIV in the health realm. You know, we're very interested in malaria, in making sure that families have access to bed nets and internal spraying when that's appropriate. And I'm pleased to see that, 10%, there's been a 10% drop in prevalence rate, and even much larger on the island of Zanzibar about malaria. Other areas, tuberculosis, family planning, food insecurity, and I know your president is very interested in a topic that is of great interest to me, and that's maternal mortality rates. We had an opportunity to have a symposium on that issue, and I hope it's an issue that we can move forward. Another thing that I think is very important is business, and that was my second priority, to do whatever I could to promote U.S. investment in this country. There's a huge opportunity here. I think it is a win for Tanzania as well as a win for America. It brings needed capital to the country, it brings needed innovation, and it brings employment opportunities as well as increased revenues for the host government. At the same time, and President Kikwete touched on this, is making sure that Tanzanian goods find their way to the American marketplace and vice versa. Reciprocal trade. I would love to see more coffee, cashews, tea, cotton that originated here in Tanzania in the American marketplace. And I would love to see more goods available from the United States here in Tanzania. And the last priority, so it was health, it was business, and the last area I'd throw into the category of people. As I look at the demographics of Tanzania, and you're a good example of that, you're a very young population. I think that 2/3 of Tanzanians are aged 26 or less. And it is a priority now, and it will continue to be a priority in the future of youth empowerment. And what can we do to make sure that there are opportunities and that Tanzanians have the skill set that they need to find gainful employment as they reach to adulthood, whether it's vocational training, technical training, and I think we've worked on that through our very broad education portfolio, spending over $50 million both in primary and secondary education, and building some of the institutions of higher learning here in this country. So youth empowerment is very important, but another area of important is women's empowerment and making sure that women have the opportunities here to be successful as they become an active participant in the Tanzanian economy. And to that end, we have opened up the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs so that women that have just ideas can receive the business training they need to take an idea to production and into the marketplace. So those are the three areas that I think are priorities for us moving forward. We're certainly involved in other areas as well, wildlife conservation, democracy and human rights, and other areas. I'll stop with those.
Thank you, Ambassador Donald Wright, for your excellent response. The floor is now open, ladies and gentlemen. If I can see a hand over there at the very end there. Who has the microphones? Who is moving the microphones? Oh, I'm told you can actually use the microphones on the desks. Go ahead and introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Lucky. My name is Lucky Mountain. I'm a student at Center for Foreign Relations, second year. I have a question. My question is on economic perspectives. The rich of history of cooperation is driven by the commitment to enhance peace, improving health and education outcomes, promoting broad economic growth. On the portfolio of trade, US as its developing partner and stakeholders, how do you perpetuate a conducive business environment for Tanzania's sustainable development, considering that trade and not aid should be the strength of Tanzania into US bilateral relation? Thank you.
Madam, whom are you directing the question?
The ambassador.
The ambassador, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and you're right. The United States is moving into an area of trade, not aid, as the cornerstone of our international policy. And I think we're already moving into that area. I've had a chance to work with your finance minister and other of your senior leaders to see what we can do to promote trade between our two countries. There are some very positive tax incentives through the AGOA Act that allows Tanzanian products to enter the U.S. market tariff-free, which puts them at a tremendous advantage. I will say that it has not been used fully by Tanzania in the past. Many of your neighbors here in Africa use it much more successfully. So that's an effort for us to improve trade between our two countries. In addition, as I said, I'm working diligently with the support of your president and all your ministers to bring U.S. investment into this country. I think it is private sector really will be the engine for growth moving into the future. And we want all young Tanzanians to have an opportunity to benefit and to reach their full potential. And the more businesses and industries that we can bring to Tanzania, it will open up more and more opportunities for Tanzania. So I'll certainly continue to work in those two areas of promoting reciprocal trade and promoting U.S. direct investment in the country.
Thank you, Ambassador. Can we take another question? Right in the middle there, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is General Lenny, a bachelor's student at the Center for Foreign Relations. I have two questions to His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Donald John Wright. And the first question, as I noted from your speech, you said that one among the core values that the U.S. and Tanzania share is diplomacy, right? Yeah, so on that note, the bilateral fact sheet published by the U.S. Department of State on the note of diplomacy, they say that US, I'm quoting from the bilateral fact sheet, said that United States has publicly expressed concern over the ongoing shrinking of democratic and civil society space, leading to media freedom and rise of politically motivated confrontation and violence. So, Your Excellency, what you see about the cause of shrinking of democratic or those democratic concerns that the USA has to publicly provide the concern for? And the second question, from the same sheet on the bilateral economic relation, they say that in recent years, Tanzania business climate has deteriorated, particularly for foreign investors. The government approach to economic policy and business community has harmed long-term prospects for investment and economic growth. A constantly shifting regulatory environment and growing government intervention in the economy create further uncertainty for investors. Now, according to the current situation, economic situation of Tanzania and the policy that our current president, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu, is pursuing on inviting the foreign investor, what's your comment? What is your advice for American investor concerning the current environment of economy in Tanzania? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. You know, the United States is a strong democracy. We stand behind the democratic process of government. We did express concerns in the past about the shrinking democratic space, but we're encouraged with the direction that Tanzania is moving. As it relates to the business environment, I think foreign direct investment in Tanzania has dropped annually since 2009. It is an area of concern, and I'm highly encouraged by what I hear from your President, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Trade and Investment. I don't have a high-level meeting that I'm not encouraged to bring U.S. investors to Tanzania. There have been concerns expressed in the past about how primitive the environment was and what could you get work permits for expatriate staff that needed to work here, a variety of issues, and those have all been taken to the leadership of this country. They acknowledge that those need to be addressed. Regulatory burden being another one of those examples. I will say that the phone is beginning to ring at the U.S. Embassy, and we're hearing from more and more American companies that are interested in looking at Tanzania as a possible opportunity on the African continent to invest in. So I'm very encouraged. Your new U.S. ambassador to the United States is very engaged, already holding some business forums trying to encourage American investors to come to Tanzania. And I think you will see the fruits of those labors in the upcoming months.
Thank you, Ambassador. The guy in the white shirt there.
My name is Stephen Charles Dory, a second-year student at CFR, and my question goes straight to Ambassador, Your Excellency Donald Wright. Your Excellency, it is with great honor that I acknowledge the fact that the United States of America is not only the land of the free, but also the home of the brave, and top destination for anyone interested in studying bachelor or master's degree in international relations. The United States also takes a reading role in international organization, and it was among the founding forces behind the formation of institutions such as the United Nations, NATO, and the World Bank. Having participated in the formation of such huge organizations and being top destination for anyone interested in studying bachelor or master's degree in international relations, now my question is, Can't we have annual diplomatic forums which will include some of your students and ours, where we can discuss and develop ideas which can not only promote and further diplomatic relationships, but also provide a network between our students and your students. By doing this, it will help to the formation of a brighter future of diplomacy in both countries. If these forums, Your Excellency, will come into existence, I have a suggestion on their conduction, that they may be conducted in turns, meaning this year at our country, your students come to our country, then they come here, our students goes to your country. By doing this, we will not only further diplomatic relationship, but also enable cultural exchange between the two countries. I rest my case. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you very much for your comment and the question that followed. I had a chance to talk with your student leadership shortly before the program began, and he expressed the same desire to see more interaction between the United States and the Foreign Service Institute here in Dar es Salaam. I think there are opportunities for that, and I know our public affairs section visited with me, and we're going to go back and see if there would be some opportunities to engage more directly, and I'm happy to work with the leadership of the center as well to see if there's opportunities for that level of engagement. I will tell you the amount of cross-ocean engagement has markedly decreased over the last couple of years because of the realities of COVID, and we're not past that area yet. But certainly this period has taught us what can be done virtually as well, so we would look at some of those opportunities moving forward. We're open to ideas, and we will go back to the embassy and see if there's an opportunity for us to engage.
Yeah, the lady in white here.
Good afternoon. My good names are Esther Marizo. My question goes direct to His Excellency President Kikwete. Him as an expert diplomat, mostly dealing with peace issues among African countries. What is your main experience and what is your great challenge when it comes to deal with challenges, conflicts among the African countries? Thank you.
Well, as I said at the beginning, there is no one size fits all. Every conflict is different. It has its own internal dynamics. For example, when you deal with the conflict in Darfur, is the farmers and pastoralists fighting over land. Only that the farmers are categorized blacks, and the pastoralists are categorized Arabs. But in Sudan, all of them are black. It's only when they say I'm Arab and he's African. So this is a different kind of conflict. In Rwanda, Burundi is the Hutu-Tutsi divide. In Zimbabwe, it was the political. It was between the NBC and the Zambia. In the DRC, it was a complex thing, you know. It was a complex thing, you know. You have a conflict that involved nations, you have a conflict that involved parties within the country. So there is no one size fits all. Every conflict has its own dynamics. When you get involved into that conflict, that's when you realize what is at issue and what needs to be done, and probably how it should be done. That's the advice I have. I the same. Kenya conflict is different. The crisis in Mozambique is different. So everywhere there are different ways, God in our dynamics. But what is important is for anybody who wants to deal with the issues, first you must understand what is at issue. What is at issue? Why there is that problem? What are the areas you want to mediate? What are the areas of convergence? And what are the areas of divergence? So that focus on the areas of divergence and see, discuss each and every aspect and see what can be done. At times you have to do shadow diplomacy because the parties cannot meet. So you have to go to these parties. As we did in Kenya, we talked to Rais separately, we talked to Kikwete separately, and still after we agree with the areas of we identified areas of divergence and areas of convergence, then we say a meeting of all the parties, of the parties. Okay, in the case of Kenya, we say no. If Kofi Annan has been busy with the committee, now I cannot go back to the committee. I said, our meeting now is going to do with the principles. So we had a meeting of President Kikwete and Raila Odinga, the two of them. We came to a point where now we needed advice. And certain areas, the Attorney General of Kenya had to be brought in. This is what is emerging. What is your advice? When we said we need to call the Attorney General, and then Raila says, I also want to call my lawyer. I said, okay, fine. Let's bring in and let's bring Orengo. So then you have, and then that is how it happened. Then we agree, and then Wako says, this is possible. This is possible. We have constitutional amendment. But 1, 2, 3 needs constitutional amendment. We ask President Kikwete, yes. What is your opinion on that? So if it's constitutional amendment, let's do it. So then that solved the problem. Then we had quite small. We finally said, okay, now we can talk all day, let's go and lunch. Then we prepare the documents for signing. We go and then we ceremony or start signing. So as I'm saying, there is no one size fits all. Every conflict is different. The issues are different. So it is up to you as a mediator to see, to understand the area. The important thing is you have to give yourself time to understand the issues. As President Kennedy was given the Burundi assignment. He went to Burundi, met all the parties separately, talked to each group separately, and then you bring all of them together at one table. And then that is when now you start negotiating. So that's what I can say, young lady.
Mr. President, thank you. I can see more hands emerging now. Let's take a couple of questions and then they can be answered as a group. Let's start with this lady here and the next gentleman and the other lady there and this one. Then we'll come to the next one. In the interest of time, make your question very simple, very straightforward to the point, please.
Good afternoon. My names are Amisa Maribane. I'm a student at the Center for Foreign Relations and Bachelor June. I have questions for all of your excellencies. I have to give a chance. So, for starters, is Your Excellency Dr. Kikwete. You had the opportunity to serve the country, the region, and the entire world to help us. You served as Minister for Foreign Relations, you served as President, you represented Tanzania as the Chairman to the African Union. Now, you saw the relevance of including youth to give them opportunities in participating in political affairs. Now, we were asking, those opportunities are kind of very rare recently. Now, the question was, the opportunity, is it that we are lazy to look for the opportunities, or is that the opportunity left with you when you left office? Then the second question is for Your Excellency Amina Salamali. You talked about making Africa having a single voice to the world. One of the African interests is empowering women and youth. Yeah, this is something that's really in trend right now. We're trying to include women, empowering women, and it's all being like that. It's what we've been talking about. Now there are several treaties that have been signed. For example, the Maputo Protocol. The Maputo Protocol came into action in 2005. Tell you what, I was 4 years old at that time. I'm 20 now. But Your Excellency, the momentum of the African Union has been less manifested in this country, and we are all aware that it is supposed to be the one that has to be high even of a priority in the world, in the African continent right now. Then lastly, for Your Excellency, Donald Rais, we talked about including students with foreign relations in America and in Tanzania. May it come into your attention that in this hall right now there is visionary minds. There are people who are willing, who are able to volunteer into working with your embassies. Now, there is a certain problem that's coming with that little goal that we all have, that we all are aiming for. It's the issue of bureaucracy. Now, there are people in here who have projects that have, the ideas for the betterment of both our country and bilateral relations. But the thing is, we're getting a little bit less support, and we were pleading. We hope that our plea to be able to have to work with your embassies to support students from the Center for Relations. Mind you, I really haven't seen people who have tried and are aspired. I'm one of them. There are excellent exceptions, writers in here. We have people with visions. So please, we plead that give us opportunities.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for the Jakaya Kikwete reform of United Republic of Tanzania and all other Your Excellencies. I have two questions, and the first question, Dr. Jakaya Kikwete. During the president's term, as Tanzania, we were blessed to host 2 American presidents. So my question is, what did that imply? What was the implication? And how was it possible? What is the unique characteristics that you possessed to the point that we were hosting 2 presidents from the United States of America in the same time and in the same country? The second question, you have served as the president, you have served as the Minister for Foreign Relations. I would want to know, for every other person in here, what was the most difficult challenge that you faced, and how did you work it out concerning the US-Tanzania partnership? What was the most difficult challenge that you faced? And lastly, during your term of leadership, Your Excellency, we saw the US partnership was growing, but later on there have been stories and there have been words that the US partnership or the Tanzania partnership with other countries is deteriorating. With your own point of view, how do you see that? Is it real that the Tanzania partnership with other states is deteriorating? And if it does, what is the reason behind? And what as the country, the measures that we should take to maintain the relations that we have had since before? Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Ahmed Simba. I'm a student at CFR, taking a bachelor degree for the first year. And my question is, to the Ambassador of the United States of America. In terms of helping youth, the positive outcome of bilateral relations between USA and Tanzania are visible in terms of economic, social, and political aspects. How do these relations influence and trigger recent economic development of Tanzania based on youth and the young economists arising in Tanzania? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellencies. Now, let me start with Ambassador Amina for your response.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your question. I would like to answer your question by looking into the past and also future. Because 1985 now is already, you're already a grown-up woman. I'm sure you have children. Sure, you are married to those days. So when the protocol came in 1985, one of the major attachment to the protocol was to equate women's rights to human rights. And if you remember, there was Beijing, committee, all those other things that we did before. But for Africa, I had to take a stand in recognizing women's rights as human rights, because human rights is enshrined in the United Nations level. But for African Union, they also had to, before the Constitutional Act of African Union, has enshrined also human rights. But what was lacking was to equate women's rights to human rights. And there are many issues that were discussed and those clauses. We talk about empowerment. Empowerment, according to the Charter, there is political empowerment, then we have economic empowerment, and now we're talking about social empowerment equal to social justice. Now, political empowerment, you can, all of you, I see a lot of girls here, ladies who are here, learning at the center. Look at political empowerment as of today. Nobody ever think in 1985 that Africa will have vice presidents, we will have presidents. Now Tanzania will have our president who is doing quite a good job. But in 1985, nobody ever think that we will have Mama Sally Johnson, we will have a lady from Malawi, we will have vice president from Mozambique, from Uganda, from other countries in West Africa. That was a fundamental, this was a fundamental document and empower our government also to look into the possibility of giving opportunity for women to access political empowerment. Look at the parliament. Parliament is where the decisions are taken. So look at the parliament, you can also look at the district level and other level. Maybe you have Tongoni here, but we have Chile and Zanzibar. The law of Tanzania, give you one example, but in many countries also now, they have this empowerment, what they call a special seat for women, but also women goes for election, but also you find in the parliament, for instance, in the African Union, we are talking about 50-50, but in SADC, we are talking about 40%. Already, many countries already surpass 40%. I have Rwanda and many other countries. Even Tanzania are not far behind. They are 39% representative of women in the parliament. So this is something that has never been before. So we talk about political empowerment. We have really moved so far. What is needed now for you to be educated and to work? We commit ourselves to work and be partner to our brother, our men, so that we contribute to the economic development and nation building. Now, the economic development, this was an issue. Even today, we have done much more, but we still need to do more, because There are areas we have not performed well. Still, women in Africa, we are in the small and micro enterprise level. But we need women in the high, large industries so that they can contribute more, especially now in Africa continental free trade area. But we also have a similar community, we have a free trade area, a similar community, we have studied. And we have known that as women, we have known that better in those sort of a forum, in those sort of market access. So for us, not a question of empowerment, it's a question of, for us to do more. President Samia, I remember in June or July, she took us from 69, 70, saying Tanzania has already provide over 7 trillion to support women initiatives. But why we have not really had those Rais and others for women's side? Why? There are so many issues that the government is taking care of, not only Tanzania, but all other governments. So again, this is another area we have done more, but still we have to perform better than this. We have to record achievement in economic empowerment as well. We need more bakers, we need more women in tourism industry, we need more women in some of the services industry. They can do it. Not because of the lack of art, but the art is there, but we need governments, our governments in Africa should review what did it work, so that we can move ahead and reach that level that the Maputo and also Beijing plan of action put that one in for us to be able to reach that level. Again now, in the future, we're talking about economic justice. What is economic justice? This is the thing that has been discussed for the last 3-4 years in the United Nations. But now there's the spirit of sitting down in a committee, sitting down and see how economic justice denies women. For instance, issues of land rights, issues of savings and credit facilities, issues of access to financing, tradition and culture. Those are the things that we have to discuss now. All the rules and conventions are already in place, but there are some blocks. We have to remove those blocks. And last, let's look at the Africa Agenda 2063. In that platform, I participated when I was in the African Union. There are areas earmarked for women, and that document was, part of the document was presented during the review of Millennium Development Goals. There are goals for women, for health, for economics, everything. And governments are working. For instance, in our vision, the vision of Tanzania for economic vision, we also partnered with Africa Agenda 2063, even for Zanzibar. So I think there's a lot of things to reflect and also we have to prepare us and we have to work together. And our government is behind us. And I think this is the right time for us to see the light, to move, to reach those heights that our fathers of the nation were during the struggle for independence. So thank you very much for the question.
On youth, I've always been a believer in youth. Before in government, I brought in a lot of young men and women who later became prime ministers, started deputies and prime ministers. Because I was spotted as a young man, and given the opportunity. So I still believe in young people, even in my foundation which I formed. I have one of the objectives is youth mentorship, leadership training, empowerment. So I still believe in youth. In fact, the CEO of our foundation is 31-year-old lady, very young, 31. So she's bright. But she was selected on merit. we formed a search team under Ambassador Safua, they interviewed men and women. They zeroed in on this young lady. But I was not there because we had to do the approval of the board. And she's doing a terrific job. She's hardworking, bright, visionary. So I have trust in him. The only thing is, give them the opportunity. When they are young, give them mentorship. Let them work under the responsibility of senior, elderly, or experienced people to impart knowledge and experience, make corrections where they need, give advice where it's required. So I still have that for young people, giving them opportunity, educate them, train them, mentor them, they'll be able to do it. Well, of course, it's interesting that we were able to have two sitting US presidents visit Tanzania. 2008, we had President Bush. 2013, we had President Obama. And my colleagues were asking me, how did you manage to do it? I said, I don't know. So the question of managing. But of course, we had really succeeded to develop strong relations with the United States and strong confidence in us. When President Bush came, he said, the US has a number of projects globally. And among the projects that they have invested a lot of money in and that were performing well were the projects that the US was implementing in Tanzania. So that's why he said he was taking 3 days and take an opportunity to showcase that their money in Tanzania is being spent well. It's being spent well. There's demonstration of results. That's precisely. Of course, we developed good working relations with President Obama. Yes, again, he visited with us. And remember when we had this US-Africa summit, in one of the sessions, I co-chaired with him. And that summit, all African heads of state coming together. We were meeting in Washington. There has been this trust, but there's been trust because there are things that they felt we were doing right in Tanzania. We were doing right in Tanzania. So we have built the relations at least the highest levels. Of course, we had President Bush and President Obama coming in at the same time, arriving at the same time. And doing things jointly, they went to the US Embassy to lay a wreath in respect to those who died at the bombing. Of course, it's no longer the US Embassy now. Then you had Michelle Obama, that time First Lady, Laura Bush. Laura Bush had actually convened a meeting with African First Ladies. And Michelle Obama participated in that meeting jointly, and he said, it's something unheard of. It has only happened in Tanzania, where you can have these presidents, president and former president, but they come from different political parties. And they're not very friendly back home, but at least they were able to be friends here. It was the Tanzanian magic that worked, that at least we were able to bring this to. Of course, after President Bush and Obama left, then we received former President Clinton. But there was a time they wanted to be, they would have come here, all of 3 of them together. But we said it was just going to be too much for us, many appeals, and then the President Clinton had to pay his. Well, we developed that relations. Well, I'm not sure if the relations are not as strong as they were. I'm not in government. The ambassador can talk about it, and the people in government can talk about it. I'm not the one to talk about that. What was the most difficult challenge? I cannot talk of any challenge that we had, because we've always had honest discussions. On areas where we agree, we talk about them. Areas where we disagree, talk about them. And then agree on areas where we would always discuss the issues and somehow agree on the way forward jointly. But having different standpoints on issues at the beginning is normal. Because they are the United States, we are Tanzania. Even when you sit with your wife, or for you ladies with your husband, at some point you get to a point where she has a different point of view. You have a different point of view. But you discuss and then agree this is how we're going to go about it. So that's natural. As friends, you cannot always think that we always think alike on issues. They will have a point of view, have one point of view. So, but we went on so many good things. For example, with President Obama, we went on the program called Grow Africa for agriculture, which was a Pan-African. It was a Pan-African thing, which I convened a meeting here of ministers, foreign ministers. We discussed, and after we discussed, we agreed on the way forward. That time, there was a meeting in Cape David. And I was invited to go to the meeting in Cape David of the G8 countries where we discussed the program. It was about food and nutrition security in the African continent. I was the one who was leading the African team in these discussions. And we came up with this wonderful argument, and then became the Grow Africa. The Grow Africa, which later was to translate itself into what we call the support area. The Grow Africa, which was going to feed the future, where issues of food and security on the African continent became paramount. It was part of the G8 agenda, part of the US government agenda, but we've been working with Russia. At that time, it was the administrator of USAID. So we've been doing so many things together. I cannot really be dishonest and say, well, I had a lot of challenges and they were. But of course, in the discussions, we will always be honest and open. Everybody comes with their views, his or hers, and then we agree on the way forward. I'm saying that we have many areas of agreement and areas of disagreement. That's what I can conclude. Well, I think I've taken up all the questions.
Yes, sir.
Yes, still there. Was there something else?
Yes, sir. Right.
Next time we come there for a seat.
Thank you. I think two of the questioners posed questions, both around youth empowerment. Let me start with those of you sitting in the audience. There seems to be a great hunger for engagement with your counterparts in the U.S. Embassy and even those back in Washington. I said earlier, I'll make a commitment to go see what is actually possible. Your student leader talked about these 3 months that you actually do an externship or a clerkship to see if there would be opportunities for you to participate in increasing engagement with like-minded people, both here at the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam as well as people back in Washington. But the other thing that I want to make you aware of is the tremendous fellowship opportunities that are available to bright young minds such as those of you in the audience. The number of fellowships that we sponsor is very large, from Young African Leaders Institute to IBLP programs, the Fulbright Scholars, the Cochrane Fellowships, the Humphrey Fellowships. They're all available on our website, and I encourage you to explore those opportunities. There are many public servants that have participated in these programs, and it's something that you may want to look into moving forward. Every month, my wife and I host a dinner at my residence, and we bring in the alumni from these programs. I love to hear where they went, what they learned, and more importantly, how did they take what they learned and bring it back to Tanzania to improve their careers and the larger community in which which they live in. So some great opportunities for those of you that you may want to consider in the future, and as it relates to interacting with the embassy and State Department employees, I promise to work with your leadership to see if there are opportunities along that line. I think there was a question to my left here on youth empowerment, and shared with all of you, it's an area that the U.S. Embassy has decided is going to be a priority area moving forward. The demographics somewhat demand that. Two-thirds of your population is age 26 or less, and we want to make sure that youth have opportunities moving forward, and women have opportunities moving forward. I have to say that I have to congratulate the government of Tanzania for receiving lower middle income status just in the last 18 months. That is a major accomplishment. But I know that it doesn't stop there, that Tanzania wants to continue to have economic growth where they can move into middle income status in the future. From my perspective, for that to happen, we have to unleash the power of the youth, this large population of young workers, and we have to unleash the power that women bring to the workforce as well. And we are working in both those areas. As it relates to youth empowerment, certainly we think good health is important for youth being successful. We've been involved in those areas for a long time. But we also think quality education is so important. And last year alone, the United States invested $50 million in the public education system of this country. About $35 million of that money went to the primary grades to ensure that there's quality education that eliminates, that improves literacy and as well as numeracy. And about $15 million each and every year goes to secondary education. And if you look at the money that we donate to secondary education, it's focused on adolescent girls and making sure that they have the opportunities to be successful. I want to praise the host government for one other thing that just happened in the last 2 weeks, and that is opening education for returning mothers to school. That now young girls that are pregnant leave the school for a short period of time to have their children can now return to the same school, and we think that is such a huge success, and we support that moving forward. We will continue to be working with youth in the area of technical training, vocational training, again with the eye towards ensuring that young Tanzanians have an opportunity to earn a living when they move into adulthood. So it's a priority for us. USAID has said that it's going to be their focus in upcoming years, is focused on youth empowerment. So we are committed to those issues.
Excellencies, the gentlemen, with that answer from Ambassador Donald Wright, we have come to an end of this Momentum Conference. I know there are still questions there. I've seen a lot of hands, but these questions will have to wait for next time. I will now invite the vote of thanks.
Tena nafasi nyingine ya mkutano. Tunataka kuanza shughuli nyingine za baadaye. So there's a lot of time today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Your Excellencies, Jakaya, Kikwete, Ambassador Donald Wright, Ambassador Mali, our graceful hosts today, Dr. Felix Manuel, Ray Mamu, Dr. Donald Murray, and most importantly, our treasured invited guests, students in the CFR. Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to be delivering this vote of thanks speech, this esteemed gathering of civil diplomats, students, researchers, and other policy actors. I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers for gracing this event and for sharing with us your experiences and opinions today. I was particularly moved by the lessons on leveraging diplomacy for increased marketing, search for investments, strengthening regional security, peace building, and above all, that particular lesson that there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution to everything in diplomacy. That is one lesson that I particularly take away from this particular gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, the high quality of exchanges that we have witnessed today owes much to the fine work done by the lecturers and the leadership team at CFR. As the foremost institution in international relations and diplomacy in the country, I believe I can confidently speak on behalf of everyone here today that the future of Tanzania's diplomacy seems to be very much in safe hands. For that, we deserve a round of applause. We in research and academia do indeed very much look forward to continue working with the Center, the Government of Tanzania, and the U.S. Embassy to broaden our understanding of the past, the present, and the future, so as to better inform a healthy relationship between our two countries. We desire for a relationship that is steeped in mutual understanding, respect, shared values, and interests, and ultimately a relationship between Tanzania and the U.S. that we can all look back on and feel proud of having been associated with one another. Esteemed guests, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our heartfelt thanks to our hosts, the Center for Foreign Relations, for the perfect logistical support and guidance that extended us to us all. An event like this cannot happen overnight. I believe the wheel started rolling weeks ago, and in that it has required all attention and planning for details. We've been fortunate enough to be backed up by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues from the three institutions involved today who know their jobs and are results-oriented. Often, we tend to see the outcomes, such as this beautiful gathering, and tend not to appreciate the underlying processes that brought about such an outcome. On the basis of what has been seen, in my opinion, this has been a very successful event today. I am truly appreciative of all the hard work and hours invested by the organizing committee, led by our very own Khadija Omari and her team, for allowing us to explore the 6 decades of diplomatic relations between our two countries in such an informative and highly engaging style. I am particularly indebted to the efforts of the students' body here at CFR, the communications team at Throught, the U.S. Embassy, and the management team of the JNCCI, coordinating preparations and flows of information in a timely and highly effective manner. The initial feedback that we're getting from our social media channels is that this event has been very well received by the general public. I cannot thank everyone enough for their hard work to the completion of tasks that has gone beyond their comfort zones. Lastly, I express my thanks to all on stage and all the stage staff as well who have made this a grand event. I wish you a restful and safe end to the year, and do very much look forward to engaging more with you in the new year. Asante sana.
Asante sana, thank you for that excellent vote of thanks. Now, our last event will be taking a few photos for our record. May I invite Dr. Donald Mali to take his seats here. The first picture will be the high table, which will be, and then the next picture will be the high table with the U.S. Embassy staff. So the U.S. Embassy staff, please get ready for the next photograph. May I now invite the embassy staff to join in the picture. Mike and colleagues, kindly join the picture. Our next photo will be high table with the report staff. So the report staff kindly get prepared. Thank you, US Embassy. The report staff is next, and we will join the high table for the next photograph. Thank you. I'm not sure if you can take a photograph with them. Thank you, report staff. The next photograph now is a little bit challenging. We'll take a picture with all the students, but we'll start with section. Just move in, stand behind the high table, and then we'll take the next question and the last one there. Karibuni kufanya chapter time kwenda. Let's spread a little bit. What is the picture? You know, hold on. Are you happy now? Can we go ahead and check the photo? Thank you. Upitie upande ule. The next batch now. And the haraka, the others will take everybody will be in photograph. Okay, kundi linalofuata. Post big picture time. Asanteni, kundi linalofuata. Watu wa katikati sasa tujiandae hapa kupiga picha. Send TV. the next group. Karibuni. Asanteni sana. The next group. The next group, asanteni. Group inayofuata. Tayari? Asanteni. Kundi nyingine, karibuni kundi nyingine. Ongezeni kasi kidogo. Asanteni sana. Kundi la mwisho, karibuni. Sasa upande ule ndio mtaingia kule, sio? Naelewa. Tutaingia kwa alafu tutatokea. Tanzania sasa tokeni hivi. Kusudi wenzenu waje kule. Asanteni. Kundi linalofuata. Asanteni sana. Kundi linalofuata. Kuna wanafunzi wako juu kule wanataka kupiga picha kule. Mpo? Ningeshauri mshiriki basi picha iweze kupigwa huko. Haya, tembea kidogo kwa nguvu tumalize haraka haraka shughuli. Asanteni sana. The next one. Asanteni. Huku la mwisho naona watu wakiwa walionekana. Tukimaliza picha hii kama walionekana tunaendelea. Sogea. Thank you. I take it. Yeye. Karibuni basi ndio kwa haraka sana. Time tukwenda na watu wana shughuli nyingine. Tunashukuru, asanteni. Kundi show. Yote kidogo. Inaelekea kwenda kusoma lakini kidogo kwa show. Asanteni. Excellencies, we have come to an end of this conference. One final photograph. The teaching staff of CFR, the academic staff, the teaching staff. Are you here? Can you come forward and take the final photograph with the high table? Hawapo. It appears no, they're not around, Mr. President. How do you not? The worst thing you can do is help the students to their teachers. Organize this. Organize people, many organizations. Asante Mheshimiwa Rais. Asante sana, nawashukuru sana jamani, nawatakia Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year kama tutakutana tena.
Vision VTC Driving School ni shule yenye uzoefu wa kutosha katika kutoa mafunzo ya udereva bora. Tunafundisha udereva kwa kutumia mashine za kisasa ziitwazo Sediro, Self Driving Instructor in a Room. Mwanafunzi anajifunza udereva kwetu kama wanavyojifunza katika nchi zilizoendelea kama vile China na Uingereza. Mashine hizi zina faida zifuatazo: kumwezesha mwanafunzi kulifahamu gari kwa muda mfupi sana, kuondoa hali ya uoga kwa mwanafunzi, kumwezesha mwanafunzi kuzijua njia zote za kujihami na ajali, kumfanya mwanafunzi aone kuendesha gari ni kazi rahisi na rafiki. Tunao wakufunzi mahiri na wenye uzoefu mkubwa. Mafunzo yanaanza saa 12:30 asubuhi mpaka saa 11:30 jioni. Mafunzo yanafanyika katika mitaa mbalimbali ya Dar es Salaam. Unaweza kutupigia 0715847004 na 0754847004. Karibu sana New Vision VTC Driving School kwa mafunzo ya udereva bora. New Vision VTC Driving School ni shule yenye uzoefu wa kutosha katika kutoa mafunzo ya udereva bora. Tunafundisha udereva kwa kutumia mashine za kisasa ziitwazo Sediro, Self Driving Instructor in a Room. Mwanafunzi anajifunza udereva kwetu kama wanavyojifunza katika nchi zilizoendelea kama vile China na Uingereza. Mashine hizi zina faida zifuatazo: kumwezesha mwanafunzi kulifahamu gari kwa muda mfupi sana, kuondoa hali ya uoga kwa mwanafunzi, kumwezesha mwanafunzi kuzijua njia zote za kujihami na ajali, kumfanya mwanafunzi aone kuendesha gari ni kazi rahisi na rafiki. Tunao wakufunzi mahiri na wenye uzoefu mkubwa. Mafunzo yanaanza saa 12:30 asubuhi mpaka saa 11:30 jioni. Mafunzo yanafanyika katika mitaa mbalimbali ya Dar es Salaam. Unaweza kutupigia 0715847004 na 0754847004. Karibu sana New Vision VTC Driving School kwa mafunzo ya udereva bora. New Vision VTC Driving School ni shule yenye uzoefu wa kutosha katika kutoa mafunzo ya udereva bora. Tunafundisha udereva kwa kutumia mashine za kisasa ziitwazo Sediro, Self Driving Instructor in a Room. Mwanafunzi anajifunza udereva kwetu kama wanavyojifunza katika nchi zilizoendelea kama vile China na Uingereza. Mashine hizi zina faida zifuatazo: kumwezesha mwanafunzi kulifahamu gari kwa muda mfupi sana, kuondoa hali ya uoga kwa mwanafunzi, kumwezesha mwanafunzi kuzijua njia zote za kujihami na ajali, kumfanya mwanafunzi aone kuendesha gari ni kazi rahisi na rafiki. Tunao wakufunzi mahiri na wenye uzoefu mkubwa. Mafunzo yanaanza saa 12:30 asubuhi mpaka saa 11:30 jioni. Mafunzo yanafanyika katika mitaa mbalimbali ya Dar es Salaam. Unaweza kutupigia 0715847004 na 0754847004. Karibu sana New Vision VTC Driving School kwa mafunzo ya udereva bora. New Vision VTC Driving